I probably should have asked if my audio was good because I'm trying out a new mic.
It's good.
Good.
Oh man, what is up, good people? We're 14 seconds in. We are live the February 24th, 2023 edition of the show, 7:39 p.m. Eastern CLE time. We have a special guest today. Well, we have the normal guest, which is Carlos Estak. Big shout out to him. But Jake
Yes.
of
the real
is
one?
is it Pime Technology?
Yeah, you got it right. A lot of people say PIMI technology, but it's
Pimmy.
Pime technology.
I went with Pime based on the spelling and my understanding of the English language. I went with Pime Technology.
Yep, you got it right.
Yep. So we're going to be hanging out for a bit, and me and Jake have been trying to make the stars align for this for a while, and it looks like it finally happened. So glad to
Yeah,
have
it's a
you,
pleasure
Jake. Thanks
being
for
on.
hanging out, man. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome, sir. Let's see what we got going on with the channel. I think for some people, they probably may not know about what you do. It's very similar to some of the things that I do. You know, we've had interactions on Twitter. We've had, I've seen some incredible photos that you've shared. The speed testing, sharing, like the different types of network building that's going on, the upgrades in your region, uh, as well as the information that you like to parlay to your followers. So you do the same things I do, like with
Yeah.
respect to the networking. So it's fun to see somebody else in the space. So I'm sure like Dan 5G Tech knows who you are.
Oh yeah, yep. I know him. Hi, Dan.
Yeah, and maybe some of the closer community members. But the goal for tonight is to introduce my community to your YouTube channel. So if we could turn our attention to the show notes down below in the description, you guys will see a link for Jake's channel. All I want you to do right now is hit subscribe, and then later watch his content. And then if you love what he's doing and you enjoy it, like it, find it interesting, stay subscribed and continue to watch content. And if you don't like it and you hate me for doing that, unsubscribe from my channel and then unsubscribe from his channel.
That works too.
Hold on, bro. You forgot to tell them they got to hit that notification bell too. So
of course. Yeah.
Loads content.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Jake's most recent video was probably about a week or so ago, maybe a little bit longer, but it was AT&T.
Yep.
They've been
AT&T
busy,
C-band.
right?
Yeah, AT&T C-band plus DoD. It's pretty neat. I did testing at right in front of the cell site. I did testing at a mile from the cell site, and I did testing at 2 miles from the cell site. So you kind of get a good idea of how that aggregation combo works at different distances. And because a lot of people just, I think it's a fair criticism too. A lot of people just go right up to the cell site, whatever, not even half a mile away from it and do speed tests. But it was good to, it's good to actually get almost a real world look at how the spectrum performs instead of just, right in front of it. So, and it turned out really well. AT&T is doing some really good work with that combo. I know a lot of people were concerned about it in the beginning. They were like, oh, AT&T is mixing up, 2 bands versus Verizon, which just took the contiguous 3.7 gigahertz route. But it seems to be performing well so far with it being 40 plus 40 megahertz, at least in the top 46 PAs. Outside the top 46 PAs, they have some DoD deployed, which in that case, you're only going to see 40 megahertz. So if you're outside of the top 46, AT&T has not done any early clearing, which is disappointing, but at least they have the DoD to fall back onto. So
You got to remember, like AT&T has a very modern network, right? Like their tower sites have been recently modernized because of the FirstNet contract. So they probably don't feel compelled to overachieve, just because of cost. Verizon, on the other hand, I feel like they're operating on necessity. They have to do the things that AT&T has been doing for the last 4 years.
Right.
Going back to the initial like FirstNet contract they landed back in 2018 or whenever they started that build. So AT&T is like, we'll get to it. Maybe we'll just wait for the rest of it to clear, and then we'll just do it all at once. And they have that like one-touch policy. Oftentimes, it's really not. They got to go back a bad radio. They got to go back for a baseband, or we see all types of different things. I've been testing. I have tested the full N77 interband aggregation, right? So the 40 and 40. I've been able to test it on my S22. but doing so through Dish, Project Genesis.
Oh yeah, yep.
So yeah, if there's no native Dish, it'll fall back on the AT&T network. So I could do it that way. And I've
Oh,
not been
Dish,
inspired. It's not great.
Dish. We'll get into that at a different
Yeah,
point.
no,
But
we're definitely going to talk about it tonight. But the AT&T
yeah,
access on Dish is good.
uh-huh.
It's high QCI. It's not like prepaid or anything. Um, but the aggregation, like say for example on my home site, I'm getting like 250, 300 megabits down under a mile away.
Yeah,
So it's
you,
for me,
you
it's been
know,
disappointing on my home site.
mhm,
But I
yeah.
have tested sites where it's like 500, 600, and I'm getting better throughput.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of times it is really easy. I know I used to do it all the time to just think about distance when it comes to cellular networks and towers. But it's very important to also take into account altitude in relation to the cell site. It's important to take into account the azimuth, that's a weird word, but I think I pronounced it almost correctly. The azimuth of the antennas, which direction, which degree they're tilted at, as
Mhm.
well as down tilt. So even if you're a mile away from the cell site, you can still be getting kind of not so great RSRP, especially on C band. So 250 megabits per second. That reminds me a lot of what I was seeing at the 1.52 mile mark. I think I was getting around 200, 250. So my guess is that although you're only a mile from the site, it's still pretty weak, the RSRP on the C band, unfortunately. But that will get better, a lot better. You'll notice once AT&T widens those different DoD and C band. Once they widen those up from 40 plus 40 to 80 plus 80. So that's one of the big advantages a lot of people don't realize with the
They've
bigger
got
spectrum blocks
they've got
is it's not
80 and 40 here.
okay. Yeah, 80 and
Yeah,
40, so
yeah.
120.
Hmm.
Yeah, not too bad. You'll still see an improvement, but like even with 1 gig backhaul in just having that extra spectrum, I've seen it here, will actually increase your throughput even like a mile, 2 miles away from the cell site under weaker conditions. On T-Mobile N41, I've been what was I 7 miles away
Oh
from the
wow.
site, I think, and I was pulling 800 megabits per second because they have a 180 megahertz. They're using 180 megahertz of N41 there.
Is
So
that
that's
over an
really a
SA
big
connection?
advantage.
They're doing like a 100 and an additional 80 megahertz channel.
Yes, 100 plus 80. Unfortunately, with 5G and R, we can't do more than 100 megahertz per channel bandwidth. I really hope 6G brings the option to
Yeah.
actually have 200 megahertz in one slice, so that
Mhm.
way you can just connect to it that way. But right now we're limited to 100, but that's a lot better than 4G LTE, which was limited to 20. So
Trust me, I've connected to CBRS on LTE, and I've seen the 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20 situation. You know what I mean?
not ideal, that's for sure. Yeah, I hope Verizon and all the carriers that are using CBRS eventually just move that to NR because I think it'll be a lot more effective on NR, especially if we see N77 plus N48. That will
Mhm.
be very, very more effective than just using it in LTE mode. But I understand Verizon was a bit constrained with their LTE spectrum in certain locations, so they want to make sure they have enough capacity on LTE before
They got
moving it over
options.
to NR.
They got some options. So like what they could do is they could do general access. They could do the unlicensed stuff on LTE, and if they have licenses in the market, they could put that to the 5G side. For N48. Here they have 30 megahertz of the CBRS, so they could run that for the N48 and then go unlicensed for an additional 60. Nobody else uses band 48 here. I never see it
Yeah.
in use.
Nope.
Verizon's
Same here.
Verizon's using like 70, 80 megahertz half the time. It's incredible. Um, I do
It's like
hear that there are some wireless ISPs that serve like the low income families in certain neighborhoods in Cleveland. But
yep.
outside of that, I mean, it's just going to be a little bit of a power restriction, I'm assuming, just because of the
Yeah.
interference risks. But other
Yeah,
than
I don't
that, I mean, it's a pretty good asset.
all the other carriers have purchased it. I don't think at the same level that Verizon has, but they have purchased it and I have yet to see it on T-Mobile
We're
or
waiting on
AT&T.
Dish. We're waiting on T-Mobile. Yeah, well,
Or
I don't think
Dish.
AT&T bought it. Dish bought some. Um,
Yeah.
Cable bought some.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dish, Cable, yeah, all those
Yeah.
all those companies bought slivers of it. But yeah, I've seen some instances of cable using it, or wireless internet providers using it. It's very, very interesting. I think I saw one from Oregon. I forget the name of the person I follow on Twitter, but they were showing in Oregon there was a wireless internet service provider that just had CBRS on a tower, and they were using it for wireless home internet. I love to see how that works, but I can't test that here. There's no such thing. It's all fiber and cable here. So
what they offer, that wireless ISP in Cleveland, they offer, I think it's $30 a month, and they offer people 200 megabits down and 20 up.
that's
for
good.
20 or 30 bucks a month. Yeah, so it's beating AT&T's DSL. It's beating cable ISPs, which are much more expensive. They're coming in on average probably $50 to $80 for internet only plan.
Doesn't beat my 300 files for $24.99 a month, taxes and fees included, with a wireless account.
This is a beautiful thing. You have two things on your side. You have fiber competitors and cable competitors all fighting over your business.
Yeah. So Cox Cable, they apparently have
trash
plans.
Cable.
Yeah, I don't have a great. I'm not very fond of them at the moment, but I'll try to be fair and non-biased. But they've announced that recently in my state, that Rhode Island, that they're going to be upgrading their network so that it's fiber to the house instead of fiber and then cable to the house.
Good luck with that one.
I've seen nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So that tells a bit of a story there. But we'll see what happens.
Good luck with their fiber, bro. It ended up on the sidewalk. I cut it all the way to the sidewalk, ripped it all out of my house.
It's a nightmare. Yep. To my local T-Mobile site, I'm getting a new T-Mobile site in my area because my house and neighborhood has no service with T-Mobile, basically nothing. It's like very cutting in and out. It's gotten better, but and the tower is just waiting on, I think, a 10 gig Cox circuit, and it's been sitting there for a year. And the other site too the other new site's been sitting there for a year. So I don't have a great relationship with Cox right now. So
that's so funny, Jake. You have bad T-Mobile service just like I do at my house. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah, it's really bad. I used to be absolutely no service. Now I can maybe get 1 bar band 71, which is actually pretty fast.
Does it make it usable?
It's actually somewhat usable. It's not reliable by any means, but if you're holding your phone the right way, you can probably load up stuff.
That is
so. Yeah,
that is so funny, Jake. I'm not even kidding, bro. You're in the same boat I am with T-Mobile, literally.
Yeah,
but you have density, you have sites.
But the thing is, I only get 1 bar of N41. He gets N71. I get N41. 1 bar.
Yeah, but N71 is more stable than N41 and Edge Cell.
I know, but the funny thing is, I'm in the same boat, bro. I have to be in my kitchen for it to work. That's the only place in the house that works T-Mobile.
Oh yeah, it's pretty bad. It used to be like my whole area for like 8 miles, like a big circle 8 miles around my house, had nothing, absolutely nothing, not even edge.
To what
nothing.
year? To what year?
Now it's much better because they've added Sprint Keep sites. They actually added a tower north of my house that's on Verizon backhaul, and that is already up and running as of 2 months ago. So, and that construction started later on that site. So Cox is really dropping the ball here.
Who knows if they ever make it?
I think they're struggling with 10 gig circuits. That's my theory. I think they're struggling to get those 10 gig circuits out versus Verizon and AT&T and Zio.
Verizon's been upgrading circuits like for the last several years. They've been moving to, XGPON and all these other technologies where they've been able to boost capacity circuits. So it's like we've seen 1 gig go to 2 gig, go to 5 gig just to residential. So imagine what's happening on the enterprise side.
It's a big advantage that Verizon and AT&T have, and not very many people talk about this advantage that Verizon and AT&T have. And I can see why they're not really talking about it yet, because it's not super widespread yet. Verizon isn't going to upgrade most of their sites to 10 gigs until later this year, once that spectrum goes up to 140 plus megahertz. Then at that point, it makes sense to, like my Verizon home site is 10 gig ready. I mean, I live in a rural area, middle of nowhere. There's no C-band on it yet. That's another story. But it's already set up to go. We're just waiting for construction there. So it's T-Mobile has to deal with those AAVs, the alternative vendors, and to work with them to be able to get their backhaul up and running. So
I feel blessed to be in a PA where Verizon, for Verizon, it's a big time market. They have like 49% market share here, right? Which is astronomical for any carrier to have basically half of the customers. And Verizon has MCI fiber here. It's theirs, and it's an old Alltel market, so they gobbled it up. Basically, most of Ohio, right, is an Alltel market that has stayed with Verizon through and through, even though AT&T has had DSL and wireline service for decades through SBC, through Ameritech, through Singular, all these brands that AT&T has consumed. Still, Verizon has kept this 49% mobile market share. And being that they're on their own circuits, they're basically all 10 gig sites. Very few Verizon sites here are not on Verizon's fiber. It's probably the freeway sites only. And that's because they just don't feel compelled to do it there because it's so readily available.
Yeah. So the funny thing is T-Mobile actually has the largest market share in my market because, I mean, I live in the woods. So it's a little bit unfair. I know I shouldn't say it's unfair because AT&T and Verizon cover just fine. But T-Mobile in the urban parts of my area, southeastern Massachusetts and Providence, Rhode Island, they have an extremely dense network. That's where you see a lot of my good tests come from. Is when I'm out and about. So but T-Mobile has like a 60% market share with the Sprint merger now in my location. So I know Verizon is trying to compete and gobble up some of that, which I think they'll be able to. But T-Mobile goes crazy, and the other parts, the more urban areas of my state. So, but it's definitely worrisome with their fiber position. I think.
Jake, I want you to do me a favor.
Talk about. Yeah.
I want you to tell my viewers, my wonderful subscribers, to like this video and share it, because right now we only have 64 viewers, and it's because notifications haven't gone out. So we need help. Remind the viewers what they could do to make sure that this video, this live stream, gets a little love in the algorithm.
Share it. Share the live stream. Share it with your friends. Share it on social media.
Yep, that helps a lot. Yeah, so guys, please just pop out of the live chat, do me a favor, hit the like button, and then share it. You can even hit the dislike. I don't care. Hit something. Choose thumb up, thumbs down, pick one. I don't care. And then share it to help out your boy. All right.
Go ahead and share it on my right now as well. You got sidetracked.
RF Waves just chimed in saying Spectrum and AT&T struggle here to move to 10 gig.
Yeah. You think about it, it's not surprising because they mostly, they operate a fiber network, but a lot of their network is also cable. So the fiber providers have had much more experience with the higher circuits, with the 10 gig circuits, 5 gig circuits, versus cable, which has just been, serving people with 1,000 megabits per second by 10, like crazy stuff like that. So I think that's why cable is struggling. The cable providers that also run a fiber network are struggling to push out this 10 gig service.
Jake, how are you seeing this fixed wireless access thing play out? We're seeing cable lose a lot of market share, right? I shouldn't say lose a lot of market share, but they're losing the SOGA battle, which is the share of gross ads. T-Mobile is taking a big chunk of those customers, right? So a little bit of churn rate at cable. The growth is going to Verizon Home, Verizon 5G Home, and T-Mobile's home internet. How do you see this playing out, man? I mean, I've been watching it from the beginning. I felt like the venom that customers had that were scorned by cable was going to come back and haunt them. And even if only 50% of the customers that tried T-Mobile and Verizon stayed, it was going to make a difference. And last year, big cable had net losses. and Verizon added 1 point some odd million customers, 5G home. T-Mobile added over 2 million home customers. That's 3 million plus. That could have been cable customers, right? How do you see this thing playing out, man?
I think people are sick and tired of cable's business practices. The fees, just the crappy, really, if you think about it, the speeds to cost ratio. They're paying $80 to $100 per month, and they're like on crappy speeds. Like their speeds aren't even that great. And so I think a lot of people are they're talking with their money. I think people are just talking with their money, plain and simple. A lot of people don't care about the speeds per se. That's another thing. There's a large portion that there's some that do care about speed. There's a large portion that doesn't care necessarily about how many megabits per second. They don't even know what that is. That's not even a term in their dictionary. Megabits per second, gigabits per second. All they care about is that they can go on their phone and load up their email, load up Google, maybe watch a YouTube video, So they're seeing T-Mobile and Verizon offering internet with their plans for $25 per month. The only company I've seen come close to that would be like my Verizon Fios, which is $24.99, taxes and fees included, for 300. But the cable companies seem to just be lagging behind with poor prices and not so great speeds. So I'm not surprised at all, and I think the trend will continue. I think we'll see some churn with fixed wireless access because some people it's not going to work for. They might be able to sign up, but the signal might just be weak inside their house or where they're using it, and it's just not a good look for them. But I think for a majority of people, they're sick and tired of cable, and cable has to change their business practices, or else, that's it. And I think that's why a lot of cable companies are making MVNO agreements with Verizon and like Spectrum, Comcast. Altice is with, I think, AT&T, but they're all making contracts with these wireless networks because they see what's happening. They see what's going on. So I think Verizon, AT&T, and any fixed wireless access provider, I hope AT&T gets in the mix very, very soon. I think they are. Cable is not going to do very well. That's all I'm going to say. They need to change their business practices, bring down prices, and I think maybe they'll grab some customers back. But
Los, let me get you in on this one, bro. How do you see this thing playing out, fixed wireless access and cable?
Bro, come on, man. You already know how I feel about it, bro. I literally was paying Cox Fiber, and I'm not talking about docs. I'm talking about Cox Fiber to the house, ONT. I was paying $160 a month for 1 gig down and 100 up. If I wanted 1 gig by 1 gig, I would have to sign up for a business account and pay $400 a month. All right. That thing was trash, bro. It cut out all the time. And then one day I had a major outage in the whole city here. And I didn't even know that my wife was using the AT&T hotspot, bro, my FirstNet line hotspot the whole time for her job. I just literally, it made me just rip everything and kick it to the bucket, bro. I was like, I literally ripped the fiber all the way to the sidewalk and just cut it. I was like, screw it, bro. What's the point? It's worthless, and this is where people like me that experience such bad situations with traditional cable, bro, are going to go to these fixed wireless products. This is why they're winning. They're like, you know what? If I'm going to get crappy service, I'd rather pay $25 for crappy than, and at least know that I'm getting subpar service or okay service, but I'm only paying $25 versus paying $160 and getting trash.
Well, that's the crazy thing, Los, is they're selling you a Lamborghini, but you ain't getting the Lamborghini. That's what cable says, right? T-Mobile's selling Toyotas and cable selling Ferraris, yet people are buying the Toyotas.
Bro, with cable, I'm getting the Ford Festiva, bro. What are you talking about?
I remember those damn cars, bro. That's crazy. You got a Yugo? We got our first super chat of the night. Big shout out to Derek. Thank you, man. Is cable pushing mobile to help with churn on internet because they don't make money on mobile? It's pretty wild. So They're selling mobile service because they saw this coming. They knew it was coming. Fixed wireless access was the elephant in the room that cable didn't want to talk about because they knew that that would bother investors, and the dollars would start flowing out of the shares. And, they tried to pretend and they acted like it wasn't going to happen, and they knew it was. So they quickly secured MNO agreements. And the way they did that, was by securing spectrum, owning AWS spectrum, owning CBRS spectrum. This put Verizon in a position where, they had to host them on their network. And I think additionally, with Verizon spending so much money on C-band and the network, they truly do have to monetize. They really should secure as many wholesale agreements as they can. Because here's the thing, Verizon doesn't compete for postpaid subscribers. They're super premium, very expensive, but they'll let big cable compete for them. Verizon doesn't want to go and attack AT&T and T-Mobile in prices. They'll just enable big cable to do it. Pay all that money for marketing, pay all that money for customer care, activation systems. We'll just wholesale you the network. And we'll take that, whatever, $30 ARPU, whatever it is, $35. Yeah, they'd make more if it was a postpaid subscriber on Verizon, but they don't have to serve them and be bothered by them. And nobody hates serving customers more than Verizon. Like, let's be honest, they'd rather shut their doors and have you do it all through an app and never communicate with you ever again. It really feels like that these days. So it has seemed to have worked for them to some extent. But I will tell you, Derek, in bringing up the churn on the internet, they've never reported that. Big cable doesn't report churn. Home ISPs don't report churn. But I can guarantee you it was high all year. And it was due to fixed wireless. S Blue Tech with the super chat. I'd rather go to US Mobile than a cable MVNO. I don't know. You'd have to look at the QCIs. I'm assuming they might vary. And I guess the plan itself, you might get a better plan at a US Mobile. You might get better access, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think cable MVNOs, I think their big advantage and why they're doing much better than US Mobile and other smaller companies is because they have the name. And a lot of people just care about the name. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've had Spectrum. Oh yeah, I've had Comcast. I'll just get their wireless service. Oh, I've had Cox. I'll just get their wireless service." So, I think that's why cable MVNO is doing so well. And I think Verizon is very smart to do this because I think it's making their company more diverse in terms of their customer base. They want, basically, how I see it is they want to keep high paying customers on the Verizon side to present well to their shareholders. And they want to also appeal to those more budget conscious customers and expand their market opportunities. And they're doing that with the cable MVNO. So I think they're genius. And it's no secret why T-Mobile went to court with Cox to get that subscription to,
they tried
because they said, what the heck, like Sprint said we were going to do it together, and now you're walking back on it. There's a reason why they spent so much money, because they are losing in the MVNO space. They are losing miserably. So and I think a lot of those, I think they're worried that eventually T-Mobile customers are going to be like, oh, all right, well, I'm going to move to Spectrum. I'm going to move to whatever,
they do.
Xfinity.
They lose. I know for a fact AT&T and T-Mobile both lose customers to Spectrum and what is it? Spectrum and Xfinity Mobile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they lose to them. Verizon doesn't take AT&T and T-Mobile customers, right? Verizon has Verizon customers, and then cable takes T-Mobile and AT&T subscribers where they can't get a bundle service discount, right? So that's what Comcast can do. That's what Spectrum can do. They're basically going to sell you mobile service at their cost, to their detriment, but they get to keep you on home ISP, which is money in the bank.
And I think that's why Verizon's results have not looked so great recently.
But they don't report the cable MVNO revenues, so it's like, to them, it just looks like losses. you know?
Right, but behind the scenes,
Yeah.
they're actually adding a lot of customers with the MVNO agreements, especially with the cable companies that they've created. So I think what their goal is to get Verizon churn under control, make sure that doesn't go up, and they want to keep their Verizon customers, but they want to add a lot of customers on the MVNO side, which I think is pretty smart. Dare I say, I don't know. This people are going to be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I think it's possible that Comcast and Xfinity Mobile, whatever Spectrum Mobile, I think it's possible they eventually offer a fixed wireless access option in markets where they don't cover,
You
where
know
they don't
what?
have a cable footprint. They actually will offer that through Verizon 5G.
Hey,
So
Jake, and you know what's funny is that I've actually brought that up, and people said that I'm crazy thinking about that. I'm like, no,
No,
it's
no, you're
smart
not. Well,
because
you know how, Carlos, they do it through Straight Talk.
yeah, and they own.
So
You got to remember, Spectrum owns CBRS licenses in areas where they don't have a cable footprint either. So guess what? They can piggyback off the 48 too. You got to think about that too. So
the
Jake,
channels can widen, the backhauls there. Yeah. Hang
exactly.
radios. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, it's I mean, it sounds crazy, but I don't know if it'll happen this year, but I could see it happening because think about it. Verizon takes a cut. Verizon makes money off of that, not as much as their postpaid home internet service. And Comcast, who is losing subscribers left and right and struggling financially,
Right.
can also profit off of that.
You know what's
So
crazy,
it's like a
Jake?
mutual agreement.
I like
Yeah.
this. This is messy. I like this for competition. This is
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
You know, what if there's only DSL in that place?
Right.
You know, a customer can get fixed wireless access and actually get legitimate uplink. We can get them 20 megabit uplink, right? Instead of 1.5 meg uplink on DSL, maybe 2 megabits tops. You know, maybe they're getting 30 to 50 downlink with fixed wireless. They might guarantee them 150 to 300, right? Caesar, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, what's up, Sneed? I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Excellent, man. Just wanted to make sure you were still there. Wanted to get your attention. Don't sleep on me, bro.
Oh, I'm not, buddy. I'm not.
All right, man. So we did a little fixed wireless. We talked a little Verizon. You briefly mentioned T-Mobile. You know, talking about their kind of like Sprint integration and how it kind of changed things for them. How has the network reliability been for you as we're coming off the heels of, I don't want to say it's very regular, but semi-frequent outages, right? Did you experience any problems over the last couple of weeks with service?
Oh yeah, I was part of the outage, the major nationwide outage. But just I think it was 2 weeks ago. My phone basically didn't work. I had to. A lot of people didn't know this, and they shouldn't have to know this. But if you airplane mode your phone, it started working again automatically. Like not too long after the outage occurred. But if people didn't restart their device, if people didn't airplane mode, there's a lot of people out there that have no idea how to do that. They never do that. Their phone would basically not working.
They don't know
Their
to
phone
do
could
that,
still not
Jake.
be working.
Right.
Their phone could still not be working because they haven't
Jake,
restarted it or airplane mode.
There was a lot of people that were restarting it and it still didn't work. The outage was really bad.
Yeah.
The East Coast got fixed. So basically in your neck of the woods, when I was talking to the engineer that night, basically your neck of the woods got fixed quick. Because a lot of the tower upgrades that were the updates for Vonar literally didn't go through. They crashed. So your area came back live like within a couple hours, maybe 3 tops. Everywhere else, it took literally a day or two.
They have
happening here.
Yeah, the thing is they have huge market share over here. This is one of probably their biggest markets is New York City. They're insanely popular in New York City.
Is that considered your PA, Jake?
It's not. I'm in the Boston, PA.
Okay.
So, but it's like I can drive to New York City in 3 hours. So they're right near each other. This little, wing over here, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, this whole area is huge market share for them. So if they're going to get one area up first, it needs to be this area because they have a crap ton of customers. So, but that yeah, it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, it's very disappointing to see what happened. On one hand, I don't think T-Mobile had much control over this outage. I something went wrong somewhere. I'm pretty sure it was a third party that probably supplied their network core or something like that, or kept their network core up and running nationwide, which I don't know why they would set it up like that. But you have to understand, a lot of people forget. I think it's easy to forget. T-Mobile is an underdog, if you really think, or they were an underdog, if you really think about it. Just like 5 years ago, we would laugh at T-Mobile. I mean, like 6-7 years ago, I didn't even know what T-Mobile was. I never had T-Mobile as a kid. It was always AT&T or Verizon or Singular. I didn't even know what T-Mobile was. It wasn't even a thing. So I think that's the problem. I think this is what we're seeing is growing pains for T-Mobile. I think they are having growing pains. The network, the security breaches, the outages, it is all growing pains for T-Mobile. They are having growing pains, and which is kind of expected. As much as it's terrible and it's not good, it's expected that they're going to have growing pains because they came from like, oh my gosh, in 2016, their network was like 2015, their network was trash. No low band. Like it was literally a joke. So if you weren't like next to a cell tower, it was so bad. So
Jake, I think what we want to do there is I think we want to push back on that. Carlos, jump in. Respond to Jake saying these seem like growing pains.
The reason why, so I'm in talks with an engineer daily, and he proved himself to me. He sent me a picture of his badge. We actually talk on the phone.
Yep.
It was a VONAR issue. They tried to be first to VONAR, and that's what caused the whole network to crash.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
It wasn't third party. It was the higher ups. It wasn't even Neville Ray. He actually didn't even want to push the update. It was the other guys that wanted
Interesting.
it. And that's why the network crashed.
It is actually kind of funny because I do say T-Mobile was the underdog, but the underdog actually seems to be wanting to leap ahead of everybody. And I don't know if it's just a competitive thing. They were the underdog for so long. Maybe they feel like they need to be on the cutting edge, like with NRSA. They've had it out for 2 years now, 2.5 years. AT&T and Verizon, nothing to show for it. Voice over NR. Dish doesn't even have voice over NR on their standalone network. So
not true.
They do.
They do
on Project Genesis. They do.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay, because from what I was aware of, it drops to the AT&T SIM when you make a phone call.
That's only in certain areas where they don't have the VONAR on.
Depends on the phone too, Jake.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
there's now. Yeah. Because I work for the company, bro.
Right.
So depends on T-Mobile too. You got to have an S21 or S22, whatever.
We have 10 cities
from what
live
I've seen.
now.
Yeah, from what I've seen from report, I've never seen somebody make a voice over NR call over Dish. So that would be cool to see if someone could cover that.
I think Carlos, we've had a voice over NR call before, right? Me and you.
Oh, yeah. Definitely link that to me. I love to see that.
We'll make a video, Jake. We'll just do it and shout out to Jake.
I'd love to see that. I did see someone earlier comment that Massachusetts is getting a lot of Dish build out for cell sites, which is good.
That what you're seeing?
I'm sitting on permits from 2 years ago with no action. There is not one. There's like maybe one Dish. I just haven't seen it in Rhode Island, and this is the top 7 PEA, and I've seen nothing. Not one site at all. And the funny thing is, you look at their map for June 2023 that they sent to the FCC, it shows Rhode Island fully covered.
It will be.
But it's February, and there's no cell sites built.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you when Rhode Island's getting it, bro. I already have. Remember, I work for the company. I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, feel free. But I honestly find it hard to believe that they're going to build all their cell sites in the next 3-4 months.
It takes us 30 days.
Be completed and ready to go.
Takes us
Jake,
30
I'm not
days.
even lying to you. Like I've seen them build a site, not a monopole from scratch. Just put their gear up in 2 days.
That's impressive.
Right. So what they do is they assemble the entire panel. They put 3 antennas. They're huge. There's 2 radios behind each antenna. it's done. It goes up, they're gone. It literally takes 48 hours.
Wow.
But we're talking about sites. But the sites already have power. The sites already have fiber. They already have plumbing. The hard part's done. Antennas and radios,
Oh no, I've looked at like the ground. There's nothing on the ground either.
The reason why we're not starting till April 15th in your area is because we're waiting on the Samsung panels to come in, because we're gonna do 2 birds and 1 stone in your area. Because why are we gonna go there, climb up, put only the JMA stuff, and then we're gonna climb back again and put back the Samsung panel for the N48 N77 combo panel?
Yeah, so they got a new they got a contract with Samsung that's got a tri-band radio, and it's going to do the 600, the 700. It's also going to do the AWS, the CBRS, and the DoD. It's going to do everything. So that's really efficient. That's cost efficient. That's space efficient. That's weight efficient. Wow. I don't blame them.
I have not seen anything from Samsung showing that there's that hardware in existence yet. I'm pretty sure that doesn't, at least on Samsung territory, that doesn't. I don't even think in Ericsson territory that exists yet. I know AT&T.
We just got the story from Fierce. 12,000 radios.
I'm pretty sure those are for the radios that go behind the antenna for their regular low to mid band spectrum. I don't think it's for the other stuff, but I've looked at the permits here and there's no Samsung.
Doesn't show you any details. No,
it does. No, it shows me the details. It doesn't show any Samsung.
What does it say for the antennas? A JMA?
Yeah, the JMA or the CommScope antennas with the 2
Fujitsu. Yeah.
Fujitsu. I can never pronounce Japanese words. It's like the Mitsubishi brand. I can never.
Respectful bow.
Yeah, but no. All the permits don't have any Samsung gear on them, and I've been keeping up, and there's no new permits either.
Check in 2 weeks. Check in 2 weeks. They've refiled in your area already. The permits 2 weeks. They'll be updated.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep an eye, but so far nothing to show. But I prepare to be surprised in June.
I hope you are.
It's always good to have a fourth carrier.
Yeah, this one from George. Thanks for the super chat. Glad I'm ported from Sprint last year to Verizon. No hacks or outages. Hey, if hacks and outages bother you, you definitely don't want to put yourself at risk, especially if those things are like non-negotiable, right? Like some people, I think they're more risk averse. Some people are a little more tolerant to things. Like, for example, someone who's younger, they might be more risk averse than someone who's older at a much more mature financially, type of situation where they're not willing to link their checking account or whatever. I don't know. Just everybody's got a different risk tolerance. Thanks, George. Appreciate you.
Someone in the comments said, "Why is Jake so skeptical of everything?" LOL. I have a good answer to that. I'm a lawyer in training, so I don't take everything I hear at face value. I listen to it, and then I think about it. I look at the evidence I've seen in front of me, and I compare it to what I'm hearing. So I also
we can agree, Jake. That would be a good surprise, right?
To permits as well. I do have access to permits. Rhode Island's very good about putting out the permits in here. So, but yeah, that's why I'm so skeptical about everything. It's no hate to anybody. That's just kind of how I am by nature. It's a good and bad thing.
so Nikki, this is the thing. They will have the 70% covered by June. Remember last June we were supposed to have, what was it, 20? What was it? What was this need 20%, right?
Yeah, it was 20 something percent.
It was 20%. Okay, we were at 28. We were actually 8% over. All right, we will have the 70 right now. Right now, as we're speaking, we're at 59% already, and we're not even in March.
That's great.
With active sites or sites in construction included?
Active.
Well,
that's
damn.
Great. Yeah.
Well, I think Jake actually has the right approach personally. I'm also a skeptic, and I'm happy to be proven wrong and surprised.
Yep.
I'll be pleasantly surprised. I said the same thing when Dish started rolling out sites, and I'm just like, guys, they did it. And I had Pete the Bearded Dragon. I don't know if you've seen him on my live streams. He's like, And I told Pete, I was like, dude, they're actually building sites here. He's like, no way. I'm like, yes, they are doing it. And it was fast. And he's like, damn, I got to eat crow. And people were shocked when they started building sites.
Yeah, actually, to point, actually, so now I kind of said some negative things towards Dish. I'll say some positive things. That's what you have to do about everything. So, Dish is actually building cell sites in my home area. T-Mobile, it took till now, like it's not even live yet, till 2023 to add a site. Dish already has plans for 2 cell sites, actually 3 cell sites in my home location already. So that's awesome. That's amazing.
There, look, as I look at it like this, we all wanted T-Mobile to win, right? So now we have a fourth. Now we have the new underdog. We got to give the new underdog a shot too. That's how I look at it. And I'm not saying this because I work for the company. I'm just saying it's just because I felt the same way when T-Mobile was the underdog.
Yeah. Carlos, we have receipts from 2-3 years ago when all this started happening with the merger. You know, Dish was the new, and this is why I pushed back with some of our viewers and subscribers. Everybody was like, I hope they fail. I hope they go bankrupt. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like this, they're replacing Sprint. Sprint's gone. You know, we have a very competitive network with T-Mobile now with respect to capacity. I think you can't really argue that. They put a lot of spectrum on air. They hung a lot of radios antennas. They integrated a lot of sites. They made their network bigger. They made it faster. They gave people home internet over that network. They changed a lot of people's lives.
Yep.
Yes, they have problems. They're not perfect. But if T-Mobile became better from the merger and we can add a fourth carrier that could also compete on some level, we're winning as the American consumer. And who knows, we get a decent retail plan. We get jobs out of this. You know, getting people back working stores, getting regional managers, getting store managers, getting employees in sales. I would love to see postpaid Dish Wireless open 5 to 10 stores in the greater Cleveland area just for the sake of creating job opportunities for people and then giving people another option for a provider, especially if the network creates fallow capacity that could use people on it. You know, that would be great.
Yeah, and Tech Guy 32 says, you're basically the person you talk to when you want to sue Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Yes, and it goes both ways too. I could also represent Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T against whether it's real estate issues, copyright issues, anything like that. So I could represent either side. That's the cool thing about
Jake.
law.
Did you know that the former FCC chair was a lawyer for Verizon?
Yes, a G-Pie. I think was Brendan Carr one too?
Maybe.
I think he's still on there. He's still on there as a
he's on the FCC. I don't know what he was. Yeah. He was a lawyer too.
I think he was a lawyer as well. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of lawyers there. So
they know the law.
Maybe you'll see me at the FCC. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I take it day by day.
Yeah. Well, they're still trying to get a 5th commissioner or a 5th chair or a 5th commissioner, right?
I don't know it's all politics, which kind of sucks.
It literally takes me out of caring because I know what happens and I have no control over it and it sucks. You know, it's jockeying and it's, you know, I don't know how these people get appointed. And clearly, you know, when we look at the FCC, they've been culpable for a lot of situations that have impacted the wireless mobile network operators. You know, C-band has been an absolute cluster. You know, the FAA, you know, the issues with the potential or supposed interference issues. Meanwhile, C-band has been in full operation across the globe without any interference issues, altimeters, blah, blah, blah. That was kind of rough to watch, you know, to watch the C-band deployment start with hiccups, with issues in clearance and the FAA. I've been blessed. The C-band build in the Cleveland market is absolutely tremendous. What the carriers have done in 13 months is phenomenal. And I'm speaking to both AT&T and Verizon because I'm in a, I think the 14th PA, you know, so I see everything. Yeah. I saw a lot of N41 get built. I saw a lot of N77 get built, and there's more of it, you know. I don't know. Maybe you can kind of share with the people, you know, with respect to Boston and the surrounding area. How's AT&T's C-band build? How's Verizon's C-band build going?
Yeah, so I'll start with Verizon because they are just they're stellar. They're doing extremely quick work. I was a bit worried towards the end of 2023, but I'm sorry, 2022. But happy to say that 2023 is off to an insane start. I've seen a dozen sites being worked on in the past 2 weeks, which is unprecedented. Verizon's moving crazy quickly. So I have no worries about Verizon. I'm actually very, very impressed by how quickly they're moving. It's very good stuff. AT&T, I'm a bit worried. They started out really quickly. They started out like they're climbing sites like every day. Like they wanted to get those 150 million pops done. They want to get those out of the way. Or I think they started with 75. They were like, oh, we'll do 75. Then I think they did 125 or 150. But I've noticed they're slowing down. They've almost stopped, it seems. It seems they built out in the urban areas, like, the busy locations where a lot of pops are. Then just nothing outside of that. Like my rural area has seen no permits. So I hope, the good thing is if they just start filing permits really quickly soon, then they just climb those sites quickly. They're good. But I'm a bit concerned that they've kind of slowed down, it seems, recently. So hopefully they'll pick that up again. But AT&T seems to have started out really quickly, and now they're slowing down, which might not be a problem.
Maybe
or
a new year of CapEx, maybe, like they kind of free up that, or, like in terms of the budget per market, maybe it's just a hold up in that respect. Caesar, let me get you in here, man. Caesar, you are in a California market. You've been watching Verizon and AT&T build, yes?
Yes.
How are they doing, buddy?
They're all doing good. I can't complain. Like AT&T's doing good. Verizon, so is T-Mobile.
That's awesome.
Speaking specifically to the AT&T 5G Plus, how's it been? Have you been testing it, using it, Caesar?
Yes, I have. I was actually like telling PA Tech Josh the other day that there's been a lot of deployments with the AT&T C-band. Basically everywhere I go, I get it.
See, that's when you know it's a legitimate build, when it's ubiquitous.
Yes.
You're outside, you're connected. You're at your friend's house, you're connected. You go to the grocery store, you're connected. Now I think we're in a place where you can start talking about it being like AWS, like PCS, how it's getting into places. People had concerns about that. People had legitimate concerns. Is this stuff going to get into the building? Is it going to get into the house? Like, am I going to be on my couch watching a movie and turning off the movie to get on my phone to watch something, see something? Is it still going to work? And I've been using both in my house. I don't even need Wi-Fi, honestly. It's been great,
Oh, no. All the range issues that were talked about, rumored about. Again, this is why I'm always skeptical. People say stuff like Neville. He says some crazy stuff like N41 goes way, 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 way further than N77, and N77 is trash. Which is funny because they bought both C-band and DoD. But
right,
yeah,
and they paid the most for it per megahertz pop.
Yeah. So there's no issues with range. It goes pretty much just as far as AWS and PCS on the LTE side. There's just a bit more of a null zone with more C-band, which is normal. Is normal because it is a higher frequency, and the null zone exists much higher. You'll actually see, like with mmWave is a great example. If you stand in between, like if you're looking at the antennas and you're standing in between them, you'll actually notice that your signal is much worse than if you're standing directly in line of sight. Beamforming helps with that a lot. Like I think that's why we're so impressed with it, and it can go almost just as far as AWS and PCS because of the beamforming. But it works really well. Yeah.
The MIMO, when I'm looking at both the Nokia gear for AT&T and the Samsung gear for Verizon here, the MIMO seems to be making a difference. T-Mobile's more inconsistent with the radio gear they're putting up in my market. Some of it is massive MIMO. Some of it is not, because on Edge Cell, I'm getting 1 megabit uplink on N41. Mm-hmm. But there are some sites where I'm on Edge Cell getting 25, where it's like 1+ miles away, 1.5, 2 miles, maybe, if some of the better sites that are tuned well. And if there's good density within the area, like it's less of an issue.
Yeah.
But that's a difference maker too. Is the higher order MIMO gear is much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Right now we're seeing 64 TR, 64T, 64R, which is great. All of the carriers are using less. They're using 8T8R, eventually 16T, 16R in certain situations. So Verizon's using it in a lot of stealth setups. Not all of them, but a lot of them, because they just can't fit the other antennas. There's just too much. AT&T, I was able to finally confirm they are also using AT8R in weird cases on regular macros. So I'm not sure what that's about. And T-Mobile also uses AT8R in certain situations as well. I actually think I saw a macro with AT8R for T-Mobile too. So I looked through a lot of permits, but yeah, from what I've seen so far, yeah, it looks like 64T, 64R, the biggest advantage of that spectrum, of that technology, is when you're further away from the cell site and your RSRP is weaker, you tend to get better performance, better uplink, better signal.
You know what you want to see, Jake? You want to see the antenna radio integrated gear, because you're getting higher order MIMO with those radio setups. So I'm always excited when I don't see a radio. When I see a radio, I'm like, no, I get the less MIMO, no, lower order. Big shout out to S Blue Tech. Thank you for the super chat. He said Verizon could still increase C-band in the Bay Area. Not sure if it has to do with the permit process, but regardless of performance, T-Mobile's still ahead, unlike other markets. Well, T-Mobile's been building, man. They had time to really jump out ahead, and the last 3 years have been good to them with respect to their 5G build. They didn't really have competition with respect to that because, Verizon and AT&T were waiting. And T-Mobile jumped on that opportunity, getting the merger, getting the N41 built. They basically had, a 2-year head start. Now their competitors have spectrum. It's going to be incumbent upon them to try to maintain that lead, however they want to describe it, whether it's pops or whether it's speed, whatever.
Yeah, T-Mobile, it's kind of just the nature of it. T-Mobile is significantly ahead in their mid-band deployment. It's going to stay that way for a while. It's just they had time. Time is money. So they just had more time to do it. But what you have to do is you have to kind of put your brain out of that, and you have to think about the time period that Verizon and AT&T have had to build out their network, and it's very, very impressive. It's likely, I don't have actual statistics on it, but from what I've seen, it's a lot quicker than what T-Mobile did with their N41 deployment. But obviously, they're still going to be behind. My home site is still LTE. My neighboring home site is C-band upgraded and everything. So it's just kind of waiting game. There's a lot of there's still delays going on, equipment shortages. Not so much anymore. We're getting a lot better with that. I think I've noticed that in 2023. It seems like they've got all their equipment they need, but we had that too. So if you take all those factors and put them together, what Verizon and AT&T are doing is nothing short of incredible. So
when Verizon built the Carlos, what would you call it? XLTE era?
Yeah.
When they first started building the AWS and all that, remember that?
Yeah.
They basically did it in like 3 years. And I was impressed. I'm like, holy cow. I can't believe they did all of that so fast. And then T-Mobile came in and did their N41 build. And I was like, wow, they did a lot in like 2.5 years. And then Verizon and AT&T, and it was crazy. Verizon did it basically from January to December. They basically covered the city. I mean, it's on. You're connected to 5G UW 70% of the time, 75% of the time. Like currently, AT&T is probably like 60% of the time. But like AT&T started in like April, so they did it in like less. They started later, but they basically did more in less time. They just waited, and I'm guessing it was probably supply related. Now things have probably stabilized, but man, really fast. And I'm telling you, Jake, the only reason they did this fast was because of T-Mobile.
Oh, 100%.
Or else they would have did it, a little. They still would have been fast about it. They needed to upgrade, but this T-Mobile's tooting their horn every chance they get. Right? It's commercials.
Yeah.
It's Twitter. It's our space. It's everything. T-Mobile just driving that point home. 5G leader, 5G pops, blah blah blah. You got to think like Verizon has pride in their networking. They're probably like, this is bullshit. We can't, enough of this. Enough is enough. And then AT&T doesn't want to be left out in the dark saying, man, everybody's got these great networks. We do too. What you mean? We got to be part of this, Is that how you see it?
Yeah. I mean, that's why Verizon spent $45.5 billion on all their C-band spectrum, which is, that's crazy. That's insane. I don't think you look at like the millimeter wave auctions; those didn't even come close to 45 billion. I think it was maybe 5 billion, if that. But it just goes to show you how high of demand there was for the C-band spectrum and how much Verizon had to pay up for it. So they don't want to just sit on that. They want to get that to every site. They want to make use of that $45 billion. And so they're going to climb and make sure they get that done. Because otherwise, it doesn't look good for them. So,
Carlos, we're looking for the Vegas insight, man. You've been telling us about some of the DoD build. You're seeing them go back up to sites where the 3.7 is. Now you're seeing them put up some 3.4. How's the AT&T build going? How's the Verizon build too? Since I know Verizon's got big share in Vegas.
Looks like you might have stepped away.
Speaking to the mic, Carlos. All right, maybe we lost.
Well, how about Caesar? What about California?
Yeah, tell us about Verizon.
Verizon's doing good here. All carriers are doing good here, especially in the alley area. Yes, they're all doing pretty good. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. But I really have to say that T-Mobile, I'm really impressed with them. They've stepped it up big time here in LA.
I know they have big time share there.
Yeah.
Right. They have a lot of customers they got to serve. I think for T-Mobile in a place like LA, they got to take the next step, which is millimeter wave and a very ubiquitous footprint of 10 gig backhaul upgrades. I think 1 gig is off the table in a city like LA with 10 to 15 million permanent residents in the county and additional, I don't know how many immigrants, right? Like they got to have, a couple, at least 20 million people when you take it all into account.
Oh yeah. You're like 1 gig backhaul. We're going to laugh at it in about a year or two. That's not going to be enough.
But Jake, we got to throw hands, bro. You, man, the mid band is not enough, bro. We got to get the millimeter wave build going. I'm telling you.
Yeah. I think it's going to depend on the location. I think, it's nothing short of incredible with what Verizon's done with their millimeter wave, especially in my market, Providence, and Boston. They have ubiquitous, contiguous, whatever word you want to use. Like if you're in the city, you have your phone outside, you have millimeter wave connection, like almost everywhere. You can walk like multiple miles and have millimeter wave. So in those sort of situations, millimeter wave is going to be vital. And I think it's laughable that T-Mobile has not invested more into millimeter wave.
Well, they have spectrum.
Right. And
they
don't
not have
using
radio gear up for it. Right.
Yeah. Well, actually, I should say my market's an exception. I live in Providence is an unannounced T-Mobile millimeter wave market. They actually have millimeter wave in multiple locations throughout my city.
Jake?
Boston. Oh, it's probably a dozen, 2 dozen, not very many, but they have it, which is surprising.
From macros, rooftops?
All small cells, all nodes,
no
macros. Yeah. They do. Yep.
Wow.
I think I made a video.
Okay.
I might have made a video on it. I'll have to do more content on that, but it's really interesting. Performs very well. I think I pulled 2 gigabits per second down and
Ericsson or
250.
Nokia?
Ericsson. I
Ericsson.
love Ericsson.
Okay.
Ericsson.
Okay.
Sorry, if I have a bias, it's Ericsson. I love
Ericsson
Ericsson.
is very good. It's very good.
Yeah, and I don't think you have any providers use Ericsson in Ohio, or the CLE at least. I think it's Nokia for AT&T, Nokia for T-Mobile, and Samsung for Verizon.
Thank you for reminding me, Jake. Appreciate it, sir.
Oh, sorry.
I don't mind the Samsung gear for millimeter wave.
Yep.
The Samsung gear has improved on the mid-band, but the Nokia gear, it needs to improve. Yeah.
It's okay. It does the trick, I like to say, but it's not the greatest. I've always had kind of an underwhelming experience in Nokia markets. It's not bad, trust me. I know first world problems. We're complaining about Nokia and them 3 gigabits on millimeter wave. But yeah, first world problems. But I think millimeter wave has a place, and I think it's going to be I think what millimeter wave is perfect for is targeted deployments, very localized, specific locations they want to cover. And I think Verizon does an excellent job. I mean, they're investing in millimeter wave still for a little bit, but eventually they're going to they're going to take a break is what they're going to do soon here, and focus on C-band deployments. But I think what they have now makes them very, very competitive, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people judge the mid-band spectrum N77 and N41 based upon a 1 gig backhaul. I've seen what a 180 megahertz worth of spectrum and 10 gig backhaul does. And it's a huge difference, because if you really think about it, you think about it this way. A lot of people don't realize this, but cell sites have 3 sectors, and with 1 gig backhaul, all 3 sectors are sharing that 1 gig. Oof. So if you had 3 people with 3 phones on each sector, and they're all running a speed test at the same time, they wouldn't all get 700 megabits per second. They would all get like 250. Now, so that's like, if you think about it, that's 1 gigabit per second for the entire site. Now you look at 10 gig backhaul. You are now have, like, let's say there's 180 megahertz of spectrum, 2 gigabits worth of capacity per a sector. So 6 gigabits per second total versus 1 gigabits per second. That's 6 times the capacity.
Yeah, it's a game changer. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an absolute game changer. And I think a lot of people just haven't, because it's not super widespread yet. A lot of people haven't seen it yet, but later this year it's going to be crazy.
Outside of the urban core, and I'd say a majority of suburban, right, can get access to a pretty decent circuit. But like rural America, I mean, they are thirsty for backhaul. Yeah. Right. Like getting high capacity circuits to rural sites can be very challenging. Some sites have it, but we're still seeing microwave. I mean, look up at your sites off the freeway when you're driving the interstate. You're way out there. Sometimes they have fiber, and then you look off the freeway and you see little microwave dishes.
Yeah. My hope is that what they do in these situations is they bring fiber. Their job, or what we do, is we bring fiber to that rural cell site, just that rural cell site. And that way we can take that 10 gigabits link and offer fixed wireless access to people all around that area, because it's super expensive to build out fiber in these rural areas. And sometimes it's nearly impossible because of the geographic difficulties. But if we have wireless, which is much more dynamic, and we have all this capacity, at least if we can get a 10 gigabit link to that cell site, just that, it's expensive, but not that expensive compared to fiber everywhere. I think that'll be a game changer for rural areas. And the good thing is that a lot of rural areas actually have tons of mid-band spectrum to go around. Now, T-Mobile might be an exception to that. I know they just did an auction, but they can't use it yet. But I know Verizon and AT&T bought a lot of C-band in rural environments.
T-Mobile's situation it's messy. They've got
really messy.
They've got a fragmented band that they're relying on for a majority of their capacity, and they'll work through it, and they'll kind of fix that over time, I think. But they also got involved in these other spectrum auctions, so they did their part. It wasn't that they didn't try. But I think where I want to go with this, I'm going to push back. you mentioned millimeter wave being in a targeted type of deployment, which to me sounds strategic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Methodical, right?
Yes.
Those would be descriptive words for this. I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
If a site has a 10 gig backhaul circuit, mandatory it needs a millimeter wave antenna radio on it. If there's a 10
Yeah.
gig backhaul, I want just spray it where it goes, it goes. It's not an expensive radio. It's not an expensive antenna combo, whatever those Samsung's got it, Ericsson's got the solution, so does Nokia. If you have a 10 gig fiber circuit, just put it there and connect as many devices as you can, as long as you can, from that site. And if it connects 10 devices, keeping them off a mid-band channel for 2 hours a day, that's a win. Because mid-band in and of itself is very expensive. And I'm going to tell you why. Mid-band is expensive at auction, and mid-band is expensive in usage. People are on it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to connect a millimeter wave outside, most likely, right? Unless you have a pivot or an echo that we start to see those come to market or something. You're going to be outside to get the millimeter wave. So there's a limitation to millimeter wave, but there's also a limitation in that the freeways, the channel depth on midband is limited, right? So we do need some improvements to tech. I'm very big on the MIMO potential. I'm very big on the beamforming to help. I'm big on more spectrum coming to market. In and of itself, though, the basic premise of networking is to densify and to get more spectrum on air. So to have 1,000 megahertz of millimeter wave and to simply just wait, come on, we got to get this stuff live. We can't just rest on our laurels. I say deploy the radios, deploy the antennas, because you already paid for the spectrum, and it actually costs less. That integration of midband and millimeter wave, the analysis has already been done. It's more cost effective to build capacity through midband plus millimeter wave, and as much millimeter wave as you can, right? So let's say let's make the argument Verizon can, because their CapEx affords it, right? T-Mobile's CapEx is much more modest than humble. My expectation for T-Mobile is a little different, but we should be seeing them deploy it more.
Yeah.
Especially for their market share in certain places.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, but the problem is the Verizon and these companies don't have unlimited resources and unlimited money. So I think when you need to also look, as much as we don't want to do that, we kind of just want to put it up anywhere. You have to look at, are users using a lot of data within the range of millimeter wave on a macro? What if nobody uses their phone, or there's very little usage within half a mile or a mile from that cell site? A lot of the usage is like 1.5 or 2 miles. It makes no sense to put millimeter wave because no one's going to be using it with that close to the macro. And so by that means nobody will connect to it, because most people aren't using their data in that location. And I guess my question would be, why isn't, if this is the winning strategy, why isn't Verizon doing it? Why isn't Verizon adding millimeter wave to all their deployments with their C-band?
No, I think that's the right approach. I think it is to look at, where is the usage? Is the usage coming from within a mile of the site, half a mile of the site? I think the answer to that is, if the usage is close, you need a small cell, right? If you're trying to shore up a coverage issue, right? If there's a lot of users over a 2 mile space and it's getting taxed, the solution is some kind of a cell split. And the solution is also to use millimeter wave if that usage is that high. I think especially with fixed wireless access, Jake, that's like, Verizon will tell you, like, it's time of the day is the most important factor, right? When are they using the capacity? And they're kind of like looking at it that way. But I don't think there's room for error. You're giving people a guaranteed QCI, quality of service. You're like, we're going to give you up to 300 down and 20 up. Could you imagine somebody getting a buffering video on a home internet just because it's 3 p.m., 4 p.m.? They're
Well,
probably
Yeah.
going to discontinue that service.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you know, if people aren't going to be using it so close to the cell site, you can take those resources, that money you would spend to put millimeter wave on those sites, on all these sites, and use it towards adding new macros, adding new cell sites. So I
But-
think that's what Verizon wants to do. Is they, instead of just putting blanketing millimeter wave every site, they want to target their deployment strategically and use the savings from not adding the radios and the gear to those sites, all those sites, and putting it towards adding new macros, adding new cell sites so that coverage
If there's a
is
cell
improved.
site, if there's a cell site that at any point during the day dips below 100 megabits per second, that site needs millimeter wave. Because
But here's
all
the
it's
thing.
all it's going to take is going to be one thing, one event, one party, one picnic, one festival, one carnival, and it's over. That sector is done.
Yeah, but the thing is, but what if all that usage that's causing it to congest is all from a mile away or 2 miles away? Millimeter wave's not going to work. That's not going to add any capacity because no users will be connecting to it.
So they got that new home internet gateway. They can utilize the millimeter wave with that because you can put that on a rooftop.
Yeah. I'm excited to see that. I think I mentioned that to see on Twitter. That would be great. Like a rural or suburban situation where you have it on the macro and then you have external antennas on the top of people's houses so that they can connect to the millimeter wave, even a mile, 2 miles. I think we saw something crazy like in a European country where it was like 8 miles or 7 miles they were connecting to it, which is super awesome. But yet the external usage, that would be pretty awesome. That might be why they bought all those rural holdings of millimeter wave. But you also have another reason why they bought all those holdings of millimeter wave in rural areas is because they were cheap. Verizon didn't spend that much money to get those millimeter wave holdings.
They did
like,
it.
Why not?
They loved it so much they bought 2 different frequencies, right?
And they're like, they're like, we have so much money. Verizon has so much money. They're like, we can just, we need to put our 5G somewhere. Let's just buy all these, millimeter wave holdings. It looks good for marketing. And eventually, Jake, if they want to do a fixed wireless access with the external antenna, they can do it.
Our tower grid here for Verizon is a macro every mile.
Yeah,
it's tight. I mean, the big antennas that have the low band frequency radios, they point downward. They're down tilted, right? Because of the power and stuff. It's crazy. The grid is tight, and that's what Verizon put themselves in when they didn't get enough spectrum. Verizon needed 40 megahertz paired of AWS when they had that. Like, their market share here is incredible, right? The most capacitive, generally speaking, is T-Mobile. They have the most spectrum. They've got the most upgraded sites with mid-band radio gear, right? But Verizon's got the tightest grid. If every site got millimeter wave where, say, for example, Verizon had home internet customers, to me, that makes sense. Support the mobile usage and also possibly the fixed wireless access product. If you see uptake in fixed wireless access, I think mandatory, get the millimeter wave up as needed. Like, those sites need to be at attention. Like, we're watching that. We start to see speeds dipping. We got to support it. You got a 10 gig circuit. All it's going to take, dude, those radios and antennas are tiny. They're the size of a lunchbox.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, when they're on a macro, you don't even see them. They're so tiny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and the CBRS ones are even smaller. The Samsung ones.
Yeah, they're tiny. They are small. I mean, you'll see the N77 ones are a little bigger. It's noticeable.
Oh, they're much bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking fixed wireless access, mobile usage, high market share. They got to look at those scenarios and just be like, let's just get people off of these mid-band channels every chance we get. It doesn't make sense. I agree with you. It doesn't make sense to just blindly put it on every site.
Yeah.
But I think it has a place on these rooftops, at these apartments, these MDUs, these condos, places where there's parks that host events. And I'm not talking about temporary colts or cows. I'm talking about like legitimate small cell that can carry the mail if there's 5 to 6 events annually there.
Yeah. I think Verizon has done that. honestly. I mean, the work is definitely could be better, and the work is definitely not over. But I think they've really done a good job, at least in 2020, where we are in 2023, in terms of future-proofing themselves with adding millimeter wave in areas where they think it might be necessary. Most of the places where they deploy it are very densely populated, heavy residential areas, airports, places where there's a lot of people close to each other. And I
Jake,
think
is it a difference maker when you're connected to it?
For me, not really. I almost never connect to millimeter wave because I don't live in the urban parts of my area. I
But
travel
if
through
somebody
them
lived in
once in a
Boston,
while.
if somebody
Yeah,
lived in Boston or worked in
yeah.
Boston, would it be a game changer for them?
For the average user, I honestly don't think so right now at the current point in time. I just don't see what use case you would need millimeter wave for versus midband with a 10 gig circuit. So if you took the millimeter wave nodes and added midband with 160 megahertz, 80 megahertz, you're pulling 2 gigabits, 2.5 gigabits per second. What can you not do with all that capacity? So I don't think it's really a game changer right now. I think it's awesome. It's really fun to speed test. And for these big events like the Super Bowl and airports that are super busy, I think in those situations, it could be a game changer if it's super, 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 super packed and people are doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But, I think midband with 160 megahertz and 10 gig circuit is plenty. I would prefer that. I would honestly prefer if Verizon took down, this is going to sound crazy, it's just hypothetical. I would prefer if Verizon took down all their millimeter wave and added like 8T8R or 16T16R midband to all those small cells. Think about it. This is the hypothetical I talk about.
You lost me, Jake.
Let me explain my
I'm going to let you
situation.
explain. Go ahead.
So this is hypothetical. You live in an area with midband nodes in your neighborhood. You are outside in front of your house and you got a nice millimeter wave connection. You're pulling 3 gigabits per second. That's awesome. Then you walk inside your house and lay down in your bed and you drop to LTE because there's no midband there and you're on slow LTE. Now, let's say we put midband there. It has much better range. You're outside on your phone and you're pulling 2.2 gigabits per second. Then you go inside your house, lay on your bed. The signal's weaker, but you're still pulling 800 megabits per second or 1 gigabits per second. I would honestly pick the midband situation. Oh, I would like to have both. Perfect world, unlimited resources, both on this.
Yeah, see, that
but
was
if I
my.
had to pick one, like Verizon has to choose because they don't have unlimited resources.
But you don't have to pick one.
In a lot of situations, they do. Verizon doesn't have unlimited money, so they have to be strategic.
But the thing about the deployment is now that you have the radio gear accessible, we're starting to see the small cell gear starting to become, it's coming to market. It's available. They have it in their warehouses. It's starting to get deployed. The answer is both. If they put a millimeter wave
world, right?
If they put a millimeter wave node there, they felt compelled to put it there for a reason. The C-band, like you said, has a purpose.
Yeah.
The millimeter wave has a purpose. That millimeter wave node will keep that C-band clear of any congestion outside. Any user that is outside will connect to that, right? The person on the bed can connect to the C-band. You know what I'm saying? See, I want.
But the thing is, all these small cells right now a lot of them are millimeter wave only. A lot of them are all millimeter wave only. I would probably say 90+% of them.
But you know what?
That is the current situation.
Okay, but does the macro serving have C-band?
So that's the thing. I was going to bring that up. So let's say under the current situation, you have a nearby C-band macro that's serving the area in addition to those millimeter wave small cells. Let's take that situation. You're outside your house. You have the millimeter wave connection, really strong, 3 gigabits per second. You walk inside your house, the macro nearby has C-band. Now you're putting more congestion on the C-band macro, and your C-band reception is not going to be as good from the macro because it's further away. So you're going to get slower speeds versus if you have the C-band small cell, you're pulling 2.2 gigabits outside, you go into your bedroom, lay down, you're not moving to the macro and congesting that up. You're still using the small cell even in your house.
All right, so we got a conundrum here. The macro power is different than the small cell power. A small cell will only, and a small cell is going to be a omnidirectional antenna. It's going to serve a radius, right? Unless it's going to be individualized sectors, which they might be doing. I don't know.
Not yet. The equipment's not ready yet, but they do have plans to do 16T, 16R radios, just like the millimeter wave.
So it'll be like 2-sector C-band,
two or
cells?
3 sectors. Yeah,
okay.
Small cells.
Okay, so I'm into that. I'm into that. I don't like the omnidirectional antennas because the limited radius of it, of what can connect to it. If it's a traditional small cell that's omnidirectional antenna, I hate that.
But the thing is, the reality still stands. The 8T8R Omni antenna on a small cell with C-band still goes much further than millimeter wave with directional radios. It's just the nature of the spectrum.
But if you have a macro tower site, it's going to more effectively reach that bedroom.
Well, not if you have a C-band small cell right in your neighborhood, right next to your house.
But if I'm in the neighborhood next to that small cell, I'm not picking up the C-band unless it's on the neighboring macro.
Yeah, I mean, if that neighboring, but then think about it. So, okay, let's say you're in a street over and you can't connect to the C-band small cell. Now you're on the macro, but the person who lives in that house is still on the C-band small cell. They weren't pushed to the macro as well. So both people are not using the macro. One is using the small cell, one is using the macro, which works out better.
I need the small cell to have millimeter wave and C-band. No questions.
Me too.
I need
Me
both.
too. I want that.
I don't want this conundrum of should we do a small cell and then just have a Mac. See, that's the thing, man.
You're in complete agreement there.
I want this is perfect world. I want a macro every mile. I want a small cell.
I want
in every neighborhood. In every neighborhood.
Everything on it. Everything. I want everything. I want it all. I want to live the luxury life.
I've been spoiled, man. Cleveland's tons of small cells for Verizon.
Yeah.
You know, T-Mobile gets by with their macro because their macro focused network because they have a 23% market share here.
Yeah.
You know, so they simply don't require that. I mean, I wish they did. It would help the edge cell, you know, if they strategically placed it. But the capacity, generally speaking, is more than adequate, even without small cells in most of Cleveland.
Yeah, and I'll bring up another point too, is now we're seeing kind of how not so efficient millimeter wave is. You have 800 megahertz of spectrum, but because of the propagation patterns of millimeter wave, you are only seeing a max of 4 gigabits per second with the current equipment. That's 800 megahertz of spectrum. Now you look at midband, which is only 180 megahertz or 200 megahertz, way less, and it's pulling 2.5 gigabits per second. So it goes to like it's not a millimeter wave. It's also extremely inefficient if you really think about it in its current deployment.
Right. The MIMO tech has been much more fruitful with midband. You know, like the MIMO that's on millimeter wave has been the same since it was first launched in 2019 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was like 4 years ago.
Much.
It's the same. You know, like we all we saw was a little bit deeper channels, and the speeds doubled because we doubled the bandwidth. But we should be seeing 8 to 10 gigabits per second on 800 megahertz of spectrum.
But the thing is, you know, at the end of the day, higher transmission modes, 4x4 versus 64T, 64R, it makes a difference, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. Because if you look at what I tested, it's on my YouTube channel. If any of you guys want to check it out after we finish the live stream here, I tested an AT8R Samsung C-band small cell, and I found that the speeds and performance were pretty much identical to what I was seeing on the 64T, 64R macro, where I noticed the difference was further away. So instead of getting 300 megabits further away, I was getting 250 or 220. So you could see that there was a percentage difference there, but it's not that big of a difference. So we can get 128T, 128R millimeter wave antennas, and we're not going to see that big of a speed increase because the higher in and out doesn't. Our phones are only 4x4 MIMO.
That's the problem.
Our phones can't keep
Jake,
up with the
oh my
spectrum,
God.
with the radios.
You're right,
we
man.
have
I was just
64T, 64R antennas with 4x4 phones.
So looking at the specs on the newest
difference.
modem. There's no improvements to millimeter wave again.
So if you think about it, when you connect to a 64T, 64R small cell, or let's say your millimeter wave 128T, the new one, the brand new one, your phone is still only transmitting at 4x4. So you might see improved coverage, you might see slightly improved speeds.
Sure. Yeah.
But it doesn't make that big of a difference.
Right.
So,
I think the bigger difference is going to be the potential capacity improvement and throughput for fixed wireless. In that case, because you could probably really improve the uplink. Right. And especially if you can get the gear outside. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that combination.
Yeah.
Because you could put bigger gear. You can get a better receiver and stuff like that into a unit that's a dedicated home hardware premise equipment,
Yeah, that's why these phones can only do 4x4 is because it's such a small form factor. We're unable to get the higher transmission mode on these small phones yet. Now, fixed wireless access external large antenna, we might be able to do 8T8R, whatever, 12x12 or whatever, 16T, 16R. I believe 8T8R is or 6T6R is where we're at in terms of large antennas still. But it's crazy how the radios are way ahead of the phones. But luckily, we still see performance improvements even with the higher transmission mode because it provides more capacity. Because now you're taking 64T, 64R, and these 4x4 phones are all sharing that. So it improves capacity and range. Yeah.
We want the 128 by 128 MIMO deployed for millimeter wave, even if our phones can't even do 8 by 8.
Absolutely.
Because there is no way we can saturate a gig down on a dedicated channel at the moment, let alone 500 megs up. We want the network set up so everybody in the sector can get the most capacity out of the sector.
Correct.
So us in an island, we could technically stand for 2x2 MIMO. We won't get amazing speeds on millimeter wave. 2x2, you can still do over 600 megs a second down with an upload around 100, 150.
Mm-hmm.
That is more than adequate if the hardware is optimized. What we're looking for is with these new MIMO tech on the really high band, the millimeter wave, is for everybody to go, it just works.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think for the millimeter wave, the challenge is not propagation with respect to like indoor, like that. I think it's just the fact that we need a decent signal to the actual devices when they do connect is to stay connected. Like, even if it is just outdoors, if a person gets out of their car, while they're in their car, they should still be connected to it. When they get out of the car, they should stay connected to it. If they go into a brick building, they might get disconnected. They're on a mid-band channel. They come out, they're back on the millimeter wave. And that's kind of my vision, right, Jake, is what I was saying by putting millimeter wave on macros is opportunities where the usage is high to back up the mid-band with millimeter wave at the opportunity where it's possible to make it happen.
I think Verizon has already done that.
For the most part, you're probably right. When you look at the markets where they've put it, it was very strategic. And I also think it's places where the fiber lends itself to actually using millimeter wave properly. You're not going to put millimeter wave on a 1 gig site. It just doesn't make any sense. Why?
Right.
A 10 gig circuit, I think, is they're starting your entry point for millimeter wave deployment.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Like, well, eventually we'll all be laughing about how we had mid-band on a 1 gig backhaul connection. That'll be a running joke of the future as well.
Mid-band channels are 40 and 60 megahertz. You know, like how they're limited right now. Sure.
Yeah.
Low band works perfectly fine on a gig connection. Mid band,
Oh, yeah.
you want 10 gig. Millimeter wave, give me that hundo.
Ah, damn, Pete. Hundo.
No, no, that's not necessary yet. Yeah,
but we shoot for the stars, Jake. We shoot for the stars.
We had unlimited resources, right? If we had unlimited resources, yeah. I don't think that's even a thing yet. Hopefully soon.
I think 50. I think 50 is on the horizon.
If you feed it 100 gig connection, you're not going to be bandwidth starved with radio frequency or backhaul, even if 80% of it's fallow.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, with LTE, we started getting these data hungry apps simply because we could do it. So if we have low latency fiber being the backbone for towers, we will get more of these 5G experience we were promised quicker.
Facts.
Because the backbone is there, and we're just waiting for the software to catch up, rather than people being timid with developing software and other applications because the infrastructure is not there. The easiest solve is the infrastructure.
That's one of the things too. Is it's like what's the use case for millimeter wave for the average person, versus midband? What use case needs millimeter wave versus midband at 160 megahertz with a 10 gig circuit?
At the moment, all like millimeter wave and even midband like N41 with T-Mobile is just perpetuating the advanced LTE with the enhanced mobile broadband.
In my opinion,
there is no use case.
Pete, in my opinion, the use case for millimeter wave is it's Mucinex for midband channels. It's a decongestant.
I like
Do we
that
need
one.
decongestants for midband?
Yes.
At this point.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
See, that's where me and you disagree.
I
would love for someone to find me a 10 gig.
I got it.
Like with 200 megahertz worth of spectrum.
I got it for you.
Congested.
I got it for you.
Okay.
Mobile Master Tech, friend of mine. We know him from the community and stuff.
I know Terrell. Yeah.
So Terrell, nice guy.
Yeah.
He does a lot of testing and stuff. His home site, it's like it goes through a nuclear bomb every day. His home site serves like a busy shopping center that includes a Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he signed up for T-Mobile Home Internet, I believe, last year or 2 years ago or something.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's an incumbent user of the service. Their market share, because of Sprint plus T-Mobile, because of T-Mobile Home Internet plus mobile growth. Let's not pretend like Florida didn't happen post-pandemic where people started moving there and the carriers weren't ready. His tower moved to a 10 gig circuit.
Yep.
And he showed me a 30 megabit per second speed test.
Mm-hmm.
On a it's mid band, it's low band, it's got it's fully upgraded. Every Spectrum asset that T-Mobile has is live and on air on that site.
And
I don't care what it takes. That site has to have a millimeter wave node to try to get any users off of N41 because 30 megabits is cutting it close, man.
Yeah. So was that the 30 megabits test on the home internet device? I believe.
I'd have to ask him.
I think it was over the home internet. I believe I saw that when he was posting about that. Yeah, the home internet, T-Mobile throttles that down to crap, and people have even had issues just with the units. Just even a perfect connection, it's still only pulling 1 megabit per second because it's not related to the cell site. Cell site on a phone is pulling 500 megabits per second, but the router is only pulling one because I don't know what's going on. There's some sort of issue there, and it's lowest priority. But But basically, you're arguing that millimeter wave would fix that. What if most of the usage on that cell site is a mile away from the macro?
But
barely
that
anybody's
sector-
going to connect to the millimeter wave. They're all still going to connect to the N41.
Right, but
So how would millimeter wave solve that?
It would solve it because the site's behind the Walmart. You know,
who's to say that all the congestion is coming from the Walmart? It could be coming from the houses that are a mile away.
Yeah, but I would prefer that the people at the Walmart are not on the N41 so long as we could help it, right?
Will the people in Walmart even connect to millimeter wave inside the building? Probably not.
No, not inside, but at least outside.
Hey, Sneed.
Outside, maybe. I bet a lot of the congestion is coming from people inside the Walmart checking their phones for the grocery list.
There's no solution, is my point. There is no solution. Otherwise, it's to put another cell nearer to where more of the usage is. Your solution is density. Your solution is not putting midband. Midband's there.
By the way,
but millimeter wave also wouldn't be the solution in that case either. It would be density.
No, the tower site's there at the Walmart.
But that doesn't mean that people inside the Walmart are going to connect to millimeter wave. It's a large building; it probably won't propagate through.
Yeah, you would need to penetrate the building
outside.
If you could freak it through the doors and then rebroadcast it under the roof with some type of
repeater
equipment that would work. Yeah.
Well, we've seen nothing to show for millimeter wave repeaters yet. Verizon has said they've deployed it in Dallas or Austin, but we've heard nothing. We've seen nothing. So I don't know how that technology is actually working in real world. Verizon might not be happy with the performance.
Well, they own the companies or they have ownership in those companies. They better figure it out.
But I guess my point is you're better off. Okay, so let's say we need to densify in that situation. Add a mid-band small cell. Add a mid-band
plus millimeter wave
inside of the Walmart.
A plus millimeter wave.
Ideally, if you have unlimited resources, you want to do millimeter wave and mid-band. But if you had to choose one, my argument is you go with the mid-band because of you're able to propagate more capacity over a larger range, over a larger environment, versus millimeter wave where you have to be directly line of sight, but you can sometimes pick it up if it's reflecting off of a window or something like that. So for the most part, you need line of sight.
So more Echo and pivots will be coming out this year just because Verizon, they already put them up in Tucson, Arizona.
Is that the voice of God?
City. The whole entire city is covered in how do you call it, with Echo and pivots. They literally have millimeter wave everywhere. Period. Every corner gets it. Every little square inch in that whole area gets it. Millimeter wave. Because of the Echo pivots.
But we've seen nothing else on that, so I don't know what's going on.
Hey, Lowe's, you know anything about iOS 16.4?
Big shout out to Green. Thanks for the super chat. 16.4 will enable DoD on AT&T. iPhone 14 support carrier aggregation with the 3.7.
Yep.
That sounds like a question.
Right.
Yeah. It does. It does.
Yeah, it should have been Will.
Yeah. And also it's an even bigger update for T-Mobile network. T-Mobile must be pissed at Apple. They must be like salty with each other.
What have they been waiting for?
Oh my gosh. They've been waiting for N25 to be enabled. They've been waiting for standalone carrier aggregation to be enabled. That wasn't enabled for a long time. That's big for T-Mobile's network. So one thing a lot of people misunderstand is actually they did have standalone enabled, not N25, but they had N41 and N71 standalone enabled prior to iOS 16.4. But what iOS 16.4 allowed was the aggregation of N71, N41, and N25. So that's why a lot more people are now seeing it. But it actually did exist before. It's just when you had an N71 signal, you had no N41 because the phone wouldn't aggregate them together. So no, that's a huge update. It's big for T-Mobile and it's big for AT&T too.
To all my iPhone peasants, rejoice! You are aggregating with 16.4.
But hey, I have my Android as well. So
yeah, if you've got an updated Galaxy, you've been in good shape for a while, right?
Yeah, I got the S22, so I'm able to mess around with the settings and enable stuff prior to its release. So that's always good. But yeah, it's nice. Android, if you're going to be a network tester, you want to have an Android device. Android is just you have so many more features built into it. The iPhone, the modem in the iPhone performs excellent. I've had nothing but good experiences with it. But field test mode is not Apple's best work. It's actually kind of a shocker that Apple puts out software
Something
like that.
Yeah, something is there, right?
And it's terrible.
Well, it was for the longest we couldn't see anything. You wanted to look at your bands, which you were connected to. You wanted to see bandwidth. You couldn't see that. I mean, it's still very limited, but it's still better now than it was, say, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
When we
absolutely.
look at
And
the way iOS was.
someone in the comments said, I'm on an unlocked Pixel 7. I can't even get millimeter wave, so dense C-band would be best. That's the thing. Apple and Samsung, with their flagship devices, saved Verizon. Because a lot of those devices probably wouldn't have millimeter wave if Verizon didn't do a partnership with it. And there's a lot of people who still don't have devices with millimeter wave. I'd like to see the stats on how many 5G devices actually have millimeter wave built into them.
Mac 11.
Yeah, I know my friend. He has 5G with Verizon, but he doesn't have the millimeter wave because he has like the what is it called, the Samsung A42 or something like that.
Yep.
Those are some of the most popular, like those budget devices, those budget 5G devices, mid-range devices are some of the most popular Verizon or devices on any network, AT&T, T-Mobile.
I was going to say the Pixel 7 is technically the high-end budget phone.
Who would have thought a $500 phone would be a budget phone, right?
The only way you can get
great.
Verizon millimeter wave or millimeter wave in general is if you buy it from Verizon.
Right.
But the My Pro is picking up no problem in Vegas.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that some manufacturers haven't put millimeter wave into those devices. I don't know why.
I know why.
They just don't feel like it's worth the investment.
Yeah, it's the bill of materials. It increases it by $40 some.
So like in a perfect world, they'd want to have millimeter wave and C-band in all their devices, all their budget devices. But unfortunately, the way our world works, it's sad. But unfortunately, we only have limited resources. And so the goal is to use those resources to the best. And sometimes you mess up and you don't use those resources to the best. But yeah, I also have an unlocked Pixel 7 and no millimeter wave.
The Pixel 7 would be nowhere near as tempting if it was priced at $550.
How much did you pay, Pete?
The Pixel 7 non-Pro with trade-in, I paid maybe $200.
Yeah, for the Pixel 7, I paid, I think maybe $150 for it. I got like a crazy deal. So what I did is Best Buy was offering a deal where the Pixel 7 on a T-Mobile account, you just upgrade it on a T-Mobile account, was $149. It was like insane. Like I jumped right on it. And then that was right before the Pixel 7 released. So I bought that device for $150, and then I went and used it for trade-in on a Pixel 7 and got basically the Pixel 7 for nothing. So I'm really good with deals and stuff like that, but that was pretty crazy. That was probably one of my better deals that I've done.
So I'm on Team Pixel, and they sent me a 6 Pro last year. I traded mine in for a 7. Yeah, Pete.
Yeah.
For the 7 Pro, I traded in my 6 Pro. I only paid you $400.
Oh,
that's not too. That's okay.
Yeah,
I mean that's not the best, but not the worst.
That's better than I thought it was going to be because sometimes Google gives you next to nothing for phones. It looks like they stepped it up this year.
Hey, they've been really generous for people upgrading their Pixels.
Green with the super chat, he said, "Will millimeter wave on phone stay exclusive to the US?" They got it in Japan. They got it in Taiwan.
Taiwan, and certain EU countries. So, well is impossible, and stay is not possible either. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, we're already seeing it in other countries abroad. I think what other countries will do is they're going to do the opposite of what Verizon did. That's a lot of people, a lot of companies are betting on doing the opposite of what Verizon did.
Yep.
They're betting on getting their mid-band out, doing mid-band first. Then once they see those mid-band sites getting congested in a few years, or if it's in a busy location and they're seeing that mid-band get way too congested, they'll go ahead and deploy mid-band in that specific location so that it can take load off the mid-band. So they're doing it the opposite way.
Mid-band.
Yeah, they're going to do it the opposite way. So they'll deploy the millimeter wave in areas where mid-band gets congested.
So what
Verizon,
T-Mobile seems to be doing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So that's how a lot of the other countries seem to want to do it. So yeah, it's good to see it in other countries as well, though.
Yeah, but some other countries also have a better spectrum position or situation. For example, their availability of mid-band has been there. You know, they aren't auctioning millimeter wave. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even out there. So it's a totally different situation. We have 10 cities that have 10+ million people. You know, how many countries have that? I mean, we're third ranked in population in the world to China and India. How they network, I don't even know how they do it.
We're also filthy rich. So we can burn money on expansive millimeter wave deployments. In other countries, that's not a thing. They're like, holy crap, we could never do what Verizon's doing.
It makes no sense for those places that have millimeter wave. They don't even have the infrastructure.
Yeah,
they don't have 10 gig circuits. You know, they don't have 10 gig circuits or anything like that.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy in Italy who does like telecom stuff, and he was telling me that a lot of their sites are still running off a microwave and non-fiber connections, which I thought was very interesting. But I also asked him what spectrum they have over in Italy, and wow, they have they have access to way more low band spectrum than the United States. We need a new low band auction, in my opinion.
We need a new FCC, and we need one that will clean up the mess.
I was going to say, for how important the FCC really, it's like vital to have a well-functioning FCC. The U.S. pays no attention to barely any attention to the FCC.
Can we talk about the 700 megahertz blocks? Can we talk about the 800, the 850? Can we talk about the interference problems with 600? Yeah. Can we talk about PCS? I mean, the EBS BRS is an absolute travesty. The spectrum sharing rules, you know, of CBRS, the powering down, the DoD problems. Like, we have issues across the board. We need 12 gigahertz spectrum out today. It needs to be auctioned today so it could be on air in 2 years. They're still arguing about what we're going to do with it and if it's ever even going to be auctioned. You know, where's the 3.1 gigahertz confirmation of auction? We don't even have that. It took 2 years to get C-band on air after officially getting ready to auction it 5 years ago. And then the FAA stood in the way. I mean, we have like political issues with our networking.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And you know, and the FCC seems to be reactive instead of proactive. I think that's the best way to put it. When the carriers cry that we don't have enough spectrum and our cell sites are literally falling apart. We don't have enough. We've literally densified and done everything, and we still cannot support the amount of traffic that's coming through. They're like, oh, okay, we'll tell the satellite companies they need to stop using that spectrum and you can buy it from them. You know, they should be thinking about this years before it's necessary, but they seem to be reactive to everything instead of proactive. So hopefully that'll change. But
a lack of leadership, a lack of foresight, you know, future looking, you know, decisions should be made for longevity, perennially, you know, wise choices, you know, sustainable choices. That's where I think some things have come up short, because when you only think about your administration, your time there, you know, it's short-sighted and it leads to hasty decisions.
We don't even have a chairperson for the FCC. We have an acting chairperson who is elected as a commissioner.
Right.
She's a commissioner, but she's acting as the chairperson. We don't even have
a fifth.
It's almost 3 years into this presidency, and we don't have a chairperson. That is just unacceptable.
You know what's
It's
even
total
crazier, Jake?
mismanagement. Yeah.
The proposed fifth person, Gigi Sohn,
Yes.
wanted to reject the T-Mobile and Sprint merger, and look what that merger has produced. You know, we could talk about the layoffs, we could talk about the stores, the redundancies. We knew all that was coming. But tell the person who has T-Mobile home internet that just got rid of DSL and satellite, tell them that we're getting rid of the T-Mobile and Sprint merger. They're going to be pissed.
And you know, at the end of the day, every decision you make, this is a bit of philosophy here, general philosophy, but every decision you make has positive and negative consequences, no matter what decision it is. So we argue over millimeter wave and midband. No matter what choice you make, midband or millimeter wave, there are pros and cons and negatives and positives to every single decision that you make. Every single choice has a positive and a negative. So, and I with the merger, tons of layoffs, raising fees, raising prices, but on the trade-off, you get better network, more internet options. So, yeah, that's why it's so interesting to discuss and kind of argue over these points, because at the end of the day, you have to try to figure out, with all the variables that are in place, what's the best decision. And no matter what decision you make, there'll still be negative consequences to it. But you want to make the best decision. So
big shout out to Green, another super chat. T-Mobile said they can get 3 gigs per second, standalone 5G on the mid-band carrier AG. Do you think that's enough capacity where T-Mobile won't have to deploy millimeter wave if the network's density is enough? You know me, Green. I'm both. Anywhere you have a cell site and you have usage that's high and you have market share that's high, I think it's important that the carrier deploys millimeter wave. If those pressures are there, right? High market share, high mobile usage, home internet usage, you have to do everything that you can. If that 3 gigabit per second site dips below 100 or 200 megabits at any point during the day, they need more capacity, right? If it stays above a gig all day, even at its worst times, plenty good, right? I say there's nothing to really do at that point. Adding millimeter wave is easy, so they could just literally wait until they need it, so that's fine.
And then in a perfect world, I completely agree with Sneed. We couldn't agree more. I want to see a small cell with both the millimeter wave antennas and the mid-band antennas. That's going to be beautiful. But if I had to pick, if it was down to the wire and they're like, Jacob, you have to choose between mid-band and millimeter wave, for 90% of deployments, 90% of scenarios, I would pick mid-band because of how efficient the spectrum is and how big of a coverage area you can achieve capacity with mid-band. So I think it will be enough for now, but I think, I agree with Sneed. I want both. I want both.
I want both. And I want that millimeter wave to get better too. I'm happy with where it is, where it's come a long way.
Yeah.
I remember the first Nokia panels. They were so bad. I mean, you had to be standing right in front of those suckers to get a gig.
Yeah.
And then they switched those with Samsung and things got better.
Yeah.
Some Samsung firmware updates helped along the way. And now we're at the 4 gig easy. And you don't even have to be line of sight. You can get multi-gigs per second now. Right?
Yeah. Funny enough, Providence was actually the first city where Verizon deployed millimeter wave. My city was actually the first city that ever had a taste of millimeter wave.
Yes. Wasn't it Chicago and Minneapolis?
No, it was Providence.
Providence?
Yes. And then it started to go outside of that. Yeah. We're going back to 2019 here, way back when it was just like, it wasn't even supposed to be like public. It was just in testing. And they would show Verizon and them using it in Providence, which is pretty neat. Humble
beginnings, by the way. Those first deployments, I'm sure it was hard to get connected.
It's gotten so much better. Millimeter has gotten so much better. And another thing, I don't think anybody has really talked about this yet, but I'm pretty sure the S23 enables 4C is it 4cc or 2? I think it's 2. It's either 2ca or 4ca on the upload for millimeter wave. So you can get 700 mega.
4. I think it's
Yeah,
4.
so you can get 700 megabits per second on the upload peak now instead of I think it was 370 or 400. So you're almost doubling that uplink.
I was getting that on my S22 Ultra.
Yes, you can enable it in settings. And me and my friend did it. We went to Boston and we enabled it.
That's crazy.
It wasn't necessarily like live yet, but you can go into the Samsung phone and enable it, and we were able to see it. But they haven't really made too much announcements on it.
700 megabit uplink.
Yeah. I think the highest we got in real world, I believe, was around 600 megabits per second.
What was the bandwidth? What were you connecting to?
Boston is a 700 megahertz market for millimeter wave. So basically, what it looked like was about 3 gigabits per second on the download, and then around 600 on the upload. And actually, fun fact, this was inside of a hotel. It was indoors.
Oh, so they had nodes inside. Okay.
The node was literally right outside the window of the hotel room, and we were able to pull 3 gigs down and set 600 megabits per second up through the window, which is really, really neat.
That is wild.
Yeah, it was funny. We were walking around all day outside. We were outside all day walking around and like trying to get higher. And then all it took was going in front of a glass window and doing it, and it was able to get the highest we've seen in terms of the 600 megabits per second upload. I guess the theory, what happens is with the beam forming, windows sometimes actually help in obstructions. Sometimes they actually help. Aluminum actually helps you get better, improved performance, which is very interesting. So it can work indoors. Millimeter wave. That's that. People say it doesn't work indoors. That's a myth.
It is definitely a myth.
Comcast.
Oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. Hold on. That is not what I wanted. I wanted to. Okay, so this is the one I need to do. Somebody was asking. They were asking a question. This is from Zachary H. Parsley. I don't know if you guys have heard of this person, but shout out to Zach.
Hi.
How to go from Metro by T-Mobile to T-Mobile. My friend, my recommendation is to not do that. My recommendation is to go into the description of this video or any of my videos, find our partner link for Mint Mobile, and try their service. Save money on your wireless and also support the channel. You'll get the T-Mobile network access at a much more affordable price. So don't switch from Metro to T-Mobile. Switch from Metro to Mint Mobile and save some real money. They got an unlimited plan too. I think it's like $30 a month. 35 gigs of usage. That's probably what your Metro plan was like. So that probably cuts your bill in half.
Yeah, Mint Mobile is a great option, especially if you want to pay in advance for your service, like 3 months. I signed my grandmother up for Mint. She really loves it. So it's and she doesn't do a lot on her phone, but
they
being able to pay in
accounts
advance
now
helps
too,
a lot.
Jake.
Yep, it's pretty awesome what they're doing with that. I guess T-Mobile's looking to buy them, which see what happens with that. But,
that's interesting, right? Yeah, Zach, you're paying $50 right now on Metro. Use the partner link in our description box. You'll get basically the same unlimited plan for $30. And I don't know about the home internet, but I don't know what type of discount they're gonna give you.
So but I can also give some general insight. So when you're going from a T-Mobile postpaid plan to a T-Mobile prepaid, so that could be Metro by T-Mobile or Mint Mobile or any of them, it's really simple to port your number over. You just get your account number and your PIN, and you can port to Mint or you can port to Metro or whoever you want. It's the same process as if you were going to go to switch to Verizon or anything like that. So,
yeah, some people are real hesitant to do any switching to T-Mobile because of hacks, and data breaches and all that. So if you still want the network, but you're trying to get away from that risk averse, that's one way to do it. Go to an MVNO or a prepaid provider that runs on their network.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate Verizon, Zach. I feel it, bro. Uh, customer care seems to be slipping. The network seems to be pretty damn good where it's getting upgraded. I don't think the network is truly the issue. If it is the issue, AT&T is a pretty solid network nationwide. T-Mobile seems to be doing really good in metro areas. They seem to be really fast. So if you're looking for a capacitive network, you can get it this way without having to spend too much money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just an FYI. I'm a Verizon customer, so so just to put that out there, I have a slight bias towards Verizon's network. I think Verizon is
you're
the
right.
most
Right,
dynamic.
Jake?
Yeah, I think Verizon is the most dynamic network in all kinds of different situations that you're in. I think Verizon overall is the best. Now they have their weak spots. You know what I mean? Every carrier has their weak spots. But at the end of the day, just use what works best for you. There's nothing personal. A lot of people are like, "Ooh, I've we're not friends anymore."
Well, you know what happened?
Carrier,
Jake, is like some people had bad experiences.
Yeah.
Somebody screwed them. An AT&T bill from 1999, and they're still mad about it. And Verizon kicked their dog back in 2003, and they're still not over it. Hey, this one is from Redbeard Kev. Thanks for the super chat, sir. AT&T tower crew just finished up the tower upgrade near me today. How long after they're done will I see an upgrade to signal quality and or speeds as well? I got you, Redbeard. So I have seen AT&T sites built and live in a week. I have seen them take a month to go live with new upgrades. It's a really wide range of outcomes. If the crew is gone and the upgrade is done, you're home free, right? The hard part is done. Now it's up to, the engineers, the quality assurance engineers to tune the site, right? And one day you're just going to be like, oh, wow, the 5G plus icon is there, right? And then you can speed test it and see how it's performing, test the range, see if it works in your family room. Like for me, my home site, AT&T took forever, 6 weeks. 6 weeks. It was not turned on, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the FAA, maybe it was a radio problem. Maybe they had to go up and I didn't see them, replace the radio, a faulty one. There's a lot of factors, but if it plays out nicely, a week or two, and if it doesn't, a month or two. That's your range of outcomes.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps, man. Damn, this guy, Metch, he brought up OmniPoint. Shout out to Neville Ray and OmniPoint, bro. Damn. That's crazy. That's an old company.
Yeah, hey, he's been in the business for like 25 years.
Yeah, he's an OG.
Something crazy like that. That's crazy.
Caesar, you there? I'm just checking to see who's left on the stream. Caesar,
yeah,
you there?
I'm here, buddy. Yeah, I'm here, buddy.
Los, you there? Or what you doing, bro? Still don't have Carlos back. Oh, he is there?
I'm here.
Pete, you there?
Oh, yeah.
Jake, is there anything else that you feel compelled to discuss? I mean, we covered a lot.
Yeah, I think as we can. I mean, as much as I love telecom, I can only talk so much in one night. So
yeah, that was awesome, man. Thanks for coming on the show, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely. If I'm available in future, podcasts, I'd definitely be willing to join. Maybe we can do like instead of one centered around me, we could do like talk about various other stuff as well. Yeah. So I'm always down to talk about anything tech. So anything telecom tech, whatever.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll make like a group within either like the Twitter DM, or whatever. We'll get you into our Google chat, and we'll just share the link, and whoever joins whenever they're available, and discuss anytime there's some new technologies, some testing we've done, and things we could share and discuss. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Everybody, please go to Jake's channel. You will find a link in the description for it. Actually, I had it up, and you guys can find him at Pime Technology, PIMETECHNOLOGY, and I think that's also his tag. So at
Yes.
Pime Technology, and
Yep.
he does a lot of some of the same things that I do, and he's going to give you perspective from his market. I would say you can have faith that he's objectively testing and evaluating networks. I
Yeah.
think, like myself, we just enjoy the technology.
Oh yeah.
Deep down,
Yep.
I think in our hearts, we really don't give a damn about these corporations. We enjoy the tech. We let the tech do the talking.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Big shout out to Jake. Check him out. His channel is linked in the description. Also, check out the real SMT Buy Me a Coffee link. Guys, I'm getting tired. Buy me coffee. If you want to support me, you can do it that way. And also, the Mint Mobile link for our partner link is there if you guys want to try out that service. It helps out the channel in the process. Big shout out to Carlos, Caesar, Bearded Dragon. Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for
You're
having
welcome.
me on.
Y'all the goats, man. Thank you.
Nice to talk with you all.
Yep. And we out this piece. Peace.
Peace.